Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have back with us Stephen Michael England, who's the president of Capstone Estate Planning, and we'll be talking about tax-free retirement solutions. Stephen, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Hey, you're welcome. So whenever we hear the word solutions, that presupposes that there's a problem to be solved. So tax-free retirement problems is a problem. We want to make sure that we have retirement set up with as much tax focus as possible. So where do you start that conversation with your clients?
Well, what I find that the majority of my clients they're 60 to 75 for the most part, but most of all the people I talk to, Mike, their retirement money, whether it's 401k, IRA, 403b, whatever it is, it's all pre-tax money. Most of it.
Yeah.
Now, they may have some Roth, but the Roth is a small percentage because the Roth, which is, everyone says all experts say the Roth is the best vehicle, but they haven't been out as long. And most people, They're employer-sponsored plans where they've contributed and got matching, and that's really where they've accumulated their money. It's all pre-tax. So this is the big problem. When you think about your estate, you have real estate, and you may have bought it for this, and when you die, it's worth this. But your heirs get a step up in cost basis. If you have stock outside of a retirement plan, the same thing. You buy a stock and it goes way up in value, and the person who receives it gets a step up, or gets their cost basis is on the date of death, so you get a step up. But with retirement money that's all pre-tax, you have a problem. It's taxed at the highest tax rates, and you have no cost basis. So if someone has $300,000 or $500,000 or $1 million or $5 million in retirement money, and you'll find that most of it, it's all taxable. Well, all of it, other than if it's a Roth. So it's probably one of the biggest tax traps out there. And it's a concern. And everybody wants a silver bullet to say, how can you show me how to get all my money that's never been taxed over to a Roth that's tax-free? Well, and there's a lot of things out there on Facebook and ads and anything that you could find. And they're saying that you can do something that you can't do. So you have to have practical strategies that actually work, and they're legal to do. You can't be doing things that will get you into trouble. So the one of the keys is, I think, while you can do it, is taking pre-tax money and converting it over to a Roth. And everybody, it seems like, that's what they want to know about. And that's what they're concerned about, because they know all that pre-tax money is a problem. They know it's all taxable at the highest rates, federal and state, and they want to get it over to Roth, and they're not sure how to do it, and they need a plan to do that. And when I ask people if they have a plan in place, actually getting it over to the Roth, most people say no. And then when they try to, they talk themselves out of it, because they'll say, well, if I take much income, then I have IRMA, the tax, on Social Security, or I have my health care goes up, or I have this problem or that problem. So they're looking at all these variables, and they say, well, I think I might, this could be someone has $2 million in money that's all taxable. And they say, well, I'm 68 years old, and I think my wife and I have decided we're going to try to move over $25,000 a year. And I would tell them, you're not going to do anything to take care of that tax problem. I mean, it's a big problem. So when you have these problems, you have to not look at all the little nuances. You have to look at what is going to cost me the most money, and how can I best fix that? And there are also strategies where you can get something to offset the taxes. So you'll pay the taxes, but you may be able to get an offset or a bonus or an incentive to bump you up on the other side, if you will, to kind
Yep.
of have a nice. Nothing's perfect. There's no perfect way to get it over there, but you have to find the best way for you. And we have some excellent strategies, but far too many people I find just don't have a plan to move it over.
Yep.
And then of course, they've changed the under the Secure Act, and then they had Secure Act 2.0, and then the IRS recently determined that beyond a spouse, if your heirs inherit your retirement money, they have to pay taxes on that money over in about a 10-year period. So they're going to be paying taxes every year over 10 years on that money. And if
Mhm.
you have children that have fairly good incomes, then they'll be taxed heavily on it too. So it's
Mm.
rather sad when you think about it, where you worked for 20, 30, 40 years, you've accumulated all this money, you've saved, you've done the right thing, you got the matching from the employer, and you're looking at this big retirement account and it looks great on paper, but you haven't paid the first dollar of taxes on all that money. And it's a real
Mhm.
problem. And if you're going to do Roth conversions, my recommendation is you get it done by age 73 or
Well,
prior
you had
to.
said before about, putting a specific plan in place and then letting it kind of do its thing. Don't put it in place and then give me some income off of that. You need to do it well ahead of when you actually need it. And the same thing goes with what you're saying here. Know that a Roth conversion strategy may possibly be a help for you, but do it well ahead of when you actually need it, because there are some moves that need to be made or taxes that need to be paid. And I know that you mentioned there's some things that can offset. So you're going to have to write that check to the government. But if this bonus or this thing comes in to kind of replace part of that or all of that, wonderful. Find out what that can mean for you. But I think the big takeaway for me, I'm hearing you say, is if that's a good strategy, let's kind of put it down on paper and see what it would be, but put it in place sooner than later.
It's true, and not everyone should
Yep.
do Roth conversion.
Yep.
I mean, sometimes it's just not worth the. You have to look at the pluses and minuses, and sometimes it's just not worth it. And I find, especially if people are age 70 or older, maybe they do. I think one thing that makes perfect sense that most people do is fill your tax bracket. So if you, most people think that whatever their income is, if they make a little bit more, then, oh, you're going to put me in the higher tax bracket, then all my money's at this rate. Well,
Mm,
that's not how it works. It works with taxes, it works in brackets. The first,
mm.
you have a certain amount of money that will be taxed at 12 or 15, and the next block is this
Yep.
higher rate. So it works in
Yeah,
blocks.
it's not once you click into the higher bracket, they don't go retroactive back to the first dollar and put all of that at the higher bracket. It's bracket to bracket to bracket.
Right. So if you
Yeah.
were doing Roth conversion, think of this. What if you had $50,000 between what your current income was and before you went up to the next income tax bracket? Then you could fill your tax bracket that year with that much going from your pre-tax money over to the Roth.
Yeah.
And there are some custodians that will allow you, if you have your retirement money with them, they'll allow you to convert any amount you want over to Roth in a year. So you can look at it each year, but the whole idea, the more you can get over there, the better off you are. But it's like you said, it's a work in progress, and it's best to start early. It may take many years to accomplish it, and maybe most people probably won't get all their pre-tax money over, but that's
Sure.
okay. I think the more you can get over to Roth, the more it will help
Yeah.
you. But you need a plan, and a plan is better than doing nothing, because if nothing is done, can you imagine you work and save all your life only to find out that you lose 40 or 50% of that money in taxes
Yeah.
on the other end? So it's a matter of
Yeah.
principle, nothing else. It's a real problem. So the
And it's never one size fits all. It's not like, oh, Stephen England met with client A and this was the plan he put into place for them. So now client B, C, D, E, and F came in the next day and he did the same thing. Nope. It's never one size fits all. And like you've already said, a Roth conversion might not be best, but what if it is? So get an estimate, an analysis and see what works. And I think that's the big thing to keep in mind.
And it's also peace of mind, Mike. You know,
Mhm.
if you owned your home, this is kind of it's just a different analogy, but I think it will. If you owned your home and someone said you can, when rates were low, you can take out a mortgage, it's 3%,
Mhm.
and I can get you this, and once you take that equity out of your house, I can get you this guaranteed rate at 6% on this investment, and so you can make money. And so, although maybe that's all true, let's just say, for an example, that was true. The numbers don't lie, and you could make money that way.
Mhm.
Maybe you're just not comfortable doing that. Maybe you don't want a
Yes.
mortgage on your house. Maybe your house is
Right.
paid and you just don't want a mortgage on it. So
Right.
the same thing with Roth conversion. Don't let an advisor
Yeah.
get you into something that you're not going to be able to live with, sleep at night, do, even if the numbers say, oh, it's so much better off. There's a cost to move that over there. And can you live with that? And can you afford to do that? So we look at all those things. It isn't, you have to have enough experience, and I've had quite a bit, and I'm not perfect, but I think having uh, people comfortable and really finding out, showing them what they can do, and then seeing if it's something that they can live with, understand the limitations and those types of things. So you certainly have to take all that into consideration when working with a client, because some people just aren't comfortable. And there are other solutions. There's other things you can do, not perfect, but there's other things you can do. For instance, if you said, I'm not comfortable paying all that tax over to get it over to Roth, but I'm really concerned that that my kids will lose and have to pay tax on all this money, and it will be taxable on that end. You could take your some money out of your retirement plans, buy insurance that would
Mm.
provide tax-free money to your children to offset the taxes. And one of the most prominent CPAs in the country, who writes many books and is a top educator, he talks about that strategy, and I've used it for years. It's not perfect, and again, that's not for everyone, and you have to qualify for it. I think the reality of it is you need to do something. If you have
Yep.
all that money that's never been taxed, and it's going to be a ticking tax time bomb on somebody, on you, your spouse, your family. And so either a plan to get it over to Roth, uh, buy some insurance to leverage some tax-free money to cover the taxes, or a combination. But you need to look at a plan to do something.
We've mentioned here, like triggers, like taxes are a trigger that are going to impact your retirement, and you can't avoid that. The only thing, guaranteed in life is death and taxes, as they say. Um, but one thing that makes me think about is what you're talking about here. Like, okay, how can we mitigate this as much as possible? Would a Roth conversion? Question mark. Let's find that out. But what about another trigger, that could impact this retirement aspect regarding taxes, but it's the requirement that when you hit a certain age, you have to take out certain minimum distributions from your account. Well, if you have to take that out of an account that's not been taxed yet, you trigger some taxes. So how do tax-free strategies impact those required minimum distributions?
Well, ideally, if you could get your money over to Roth before, that's why we said right now the RMD age is 73. And
Mhm.
that can change in the future, but most people remember when it was 70 and a half, and 72, 73 right now. But that's why we recommend most people, if they're in their early to mid 60s, is to try to get their conversion done by age 73, so that you don't
Mm,
have those required minimum distributions.
got it.
And if you do have those, uh, there's some things you can do. Some people, they have taxes withheld from the required minimum distributions, and they take the net income, but having taxes withheld means they don't have to go into their pocket to pay the taxes. And for people that, let's say, they do not need the required minimum distributions, but you have to take them, then maybe you provide a legacy plan for your family
Hmm.
or for your spouse.
So you're still
RMD have taxes
recognizing those
withheld.
kind of things, but you're putting plans in place in advance of that, like in advance of the RMD age. That's a good point.
It is, because you can sometimes leverage your money to accomplish some things or to offset some of the problems that you will have with either taxes or uh, you income replacement or whatever it might be. And a required minimum distribution, even though some people might say, I wish I didn't have to take that, or can you?
Yeah.
I've had people say, can you show me a way where I can get around that? Well, I can't, because it's an
Right.
IRS rule. There's no way to get
Yeah.
around it. But
Yep.
what if you turn something that's kind of a negative into something positive? What if you are able to use that RMD to accomplish something quite substantial in your planning? And you can do that. But for most people, they want to try to minimize or eliminate the RMDs, and really the Roth
Yeah.
conversion is the way to do it. But again, it's not for everybody. How do you do it? Do you just fill your tax bracket? Do you do more? How much?
It,
What can you live with?
yeah.
And
It's a strategy, and it's not just cursory check the box, done, I got it done. It is a strategy, and it reminds me of playing chess. You make your move and you leave your finger on the piece to go, is this the right move? Is this the right move? So from what you're saying here, there are many variables that can be very beneficial and some very detrimental. It's a strategy. Make sure you have it in place, and that's huge. So one thought that came to my mind is there a way that if you were required to take that certain required minimum distribution out of an account that's never been taxed, so you know you're going to incur a tax, but then you use that and put it into some vehicle that then generates some type of a tax deduction or tax break? Yeah, you might have paid it out to the government, but maybe through that move, and we don't need to get into details of the move or the strategy, but would then that be a possibility that you're kind of recouping some of that then later on down the road?
well, one thing, I deal with a lot of uh, clients that donate or tie to their church. And
Hmm.
one thing that I would say, and it makes perfect sense, and many custodians allow you to do this, that you can have your RMDs and are made out directly to your church
Mm.
or to your charitable organization. And so that's an advantage by doing that.
Hmm.
And so many people do that, or you could incorporate the RMDs. I think there's lots of things you can do and strategies you can use if you don't need the money. You have taxes withheld
Yes.
and do gifting to children and grandchildren. You can, uh, like I said, buy insurance to offset, to give tax free money to spouse or family to offset the taxes if you don't get it all over to Roth. So there's a lot of solutions for that. But the biggest mistake people have is simply doing nothing. Even if you just fill your tax bracket, do something, have a plan,
Yep.
and you look at it each year, adjust your plan, but knowing that really this tax on your retirement money that's fully taxable. Think about this, Mike. Most investments you would have long-term capital gains tax rate on the money. If you did not have a step up in cost basis at death, where there's really no taxes, you would, like in your lifetime, you'd at least have the reduced or the low long term capital tax rate. But with
Mm.
retirement money, not only is it taxed, all the money is pre tax, so it's 100% taxable. There's no cost basis. It's taxed at the highest income tax rates, both federal and state, if you have a state tax. So it's very substantial. I think it's the biggest tax problem that most people have regarding their financial and planning estate. So it's a real tax problem, much more so than real estate or stocks or many other things. It's something that's really, I call it a ticking tax time bomb. It's going to blow up
Mm.
on somebody.
Yeah.
So reducing that or having a plan is certainly better than doing nothing. And it's not easy, but it's definitely beneficial if you can get it over. And we do have tools in the tool bag that can give you some offsets to cover some of the taxes to get it over. And although those things may have come with some kind of a cost, I would say it's much better than if you didn't do it at all.
Yeah,
And
and I don't know how all that works, but I've heard some of those costs, air quotes, would be, well, hey, we gave you this little bumper incentive, so you need to leave the funds in this specific account for X number of time. And when I hear that, I'm like, that's what I plan to anyway. So that's not really a risk or a cost. So there's things like that just to consider. I think that's a great point that you bring up.
there's no question, but I think the biggest thing that I see is I'm always talking to people that are just retired or planning to retire, and excuse me, I ask them if they have a tax plan in place and working. That's one of the holistic planning questions I have. Um, do you have an active Roth conversion strategy in
Mm.
place and working to minimize taxes? That's one of the questions.
Yeah.
And 90 some percent of the time, the answer is no. I've thought about it, read about it, thinking about it, would like to do it, but but they're not doing it. So you need to do something. Uh, and even as I would say, very few people probably could do this, but there was a gentleman that one of our fiduciaries worked with out of Texas, and he had several $1,000,000, and he did his Roth. It was all pre-tax money, and he did his Roth conversion all at once,
Mm.
which causes you additional taxes because if you do more than what 250,000 or 260 in a year, or if your income is above that something. Anyways, he was at the high rates to do it, but he got it
He
over
just
there
pulled that
all at
Band-Aid
once.
right off.
He did, and very few people can do that. But
Yeah.
he was in a position where he could handle it. He wanted to do it, and one of the greatest stories I ever heard was I have a client who was he was very high level with the IRS. He retired, and he was a CPA with a private practice, and his clients were, that some of them owned hotel chains, and very large clients. He had few clients, but very large clients. And so he was a very, very smart guy, and he had his money invested in a pretty aggressive way. He picked his own investments, but they were high risk investments. And in 2008, when we had the big financial meltdown, his portfolio went down, I don't know, 70% in value or something. He
Mm.
converted right at the bottom, he converted everything over to Roth. And then, of course, everything came back up, and is think of it, what the market was then, and now it's at
Yeah.
43,000 or whatever. But he was one of the few people that I ever talked to. He had everything in Roth because he switched it over at the absolute lowest time. So that's the other
Mm.
thing. If
Yeah.
there's a big if there's a big drop and your accounts go way down, it's a good time to switch the money over, which leads me to say this. That's another danger though. If you converted your money over and then the markets drop, that's not good. You've converted money over at the higher uh, dollar amount. So when you convert money over, it's best to do it with something that has a floor or a base that will not go down in
Mm.
value. So
So
we try
needless
to
to
do
say,
that.
you can't just do this on your own and roll the dice and hope I did it right and hope I did it at the right time. get some help from someone like yourself that can look at the whole landscape, see what's best for you, give options, and help you decide, just guide the decision process.
It's true. And even myself, I help people in the planning process, but there's fiduciaries that I work with that we use to facilitate the plan and make sure that they keep them in a certain tax bracket, et cetera, et cetera. So it definitely takes a team. It's not easy, but I've seen some very successful Roth conversion strategies work out. And I think it's probably one of the biggest, it's the most talked about but most overlooked as far as percentage of people that actually have a plan in place and it's actually working.
Excellent. Well, I'll tell you, Stephen, this has been some really great ways to think about options for that tax-free retirement income strategy. So if someone is interested in maybe seeing what they could benefit from and just getting some options, what's the best way that they can contact you?
They can email me, steve@capstoneestateplanning.com.
Excellent. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for coming back on. It's been a real pleasure talking with you today.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.